Hello everyone, my name is Collin Furrows. I do not own a laptop, so I'm going to be doing this with a desktop. So I'll let you know when I transition the slides so you have something to go along with. I'll post the presentation, obviously, with this video. My presentation is The Future of Police Work, which is a 5-year projection into the future of law enforcement. So if we go to the first slide, we talk about the major factors as far as the growth or shrinking of the law enforcement field, which is the population size of the United States, crime rates in the United States, and population density. Next slide. First of all is population size. So the FBI reports that the U.S. averages for police officers per 1,000 inhabitants is about 2.8 officers per 1,000 inhabitants. Now, this statistic is not entirely important, as we know, just because you have a certain number of people on that average does not mean that every single in a city, 1,000 people might not have 2.8 police officers. They have more, they may have less. But as the general population of the United States increases, more police officers will be needed. That's just a guaranteed fact. And that's the same with every field. If you talk about a growth of population, you're going to need more stockbrokers if there's more people. You're going to need more restaurant workers. You're going to need more factory workers if there's more people. In 2017, the U.S. Census Bureau recorded that the U.S. population grew by about 1.55 million people. Now, normally that would translate to about 4,500 officers, which is obviously too little, so that will move us into our next slide. The next important aspect is population density. So population density is more critical to the number of police officers and officer jobs available than total population of the United States. So what this basically means is that, in a rural town of maybe 1,000 people, you might just have, a force of 1 or 2 people. But if you have 1 or 2 people per 1,000. But if you go into a city like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, you're going to have a variance of say 30 police officers per 1,000 residents because of the density. When you have people living much closer to each other in a much more compact area like a city, the number of incidents, whether they be violent crimes or minor crimes or white-collar crimes, is going to increase when you have people near each other. And if you think about it, if you're in a rural town, the chances that you're going to get, you're going to be involved in an incident, whether that's a robbery or something, is very low because there's very few people near you. So that would be a decrease in incidents. There's also a large correlation between the amount of wealth a city has and the density. The correlation between density and police officers will always be increasing. The higher the density, the more the police officers. But sometimes there will be outliers based on the wealth of the wealth of the city. So if you look at the case of, say, the population of Beverly Hills and the population of Jersey City, which would be similar, Beverly Hills has way more police officers for their density, even though it's close to the population density of Jersey City. And this is because, of course, the more wealth, the more taxes, which means more income to pay police officers. So, as strange as it may seem, wealth is definitely a factor in the security of a city. It may seem like everybody should get an equal treatment as far as how many police officers they get in their city, but wealth is a definite factor. If we go to the next slide, we can see the police officers per population density, and up to about a city of 500,000 plus people in a jurisdiction, which is not very much. I mean, we live in the county of Los Angeles, or some of us do, and we have a much higher density for police officers to population. It's around 35 per 10,000. So when we're looking at on this chart, 5,000 plus gets around 24.3 police officers per 10,000 people. Now, I mean, if you think about that, obviously not all of these incidents are happening all at once, but that's a very few amount of police officers for the population. If we go to the next slide, we can see for rising crime rates, thankfully, the Bureau of Justice Statistics has reported that there's been a decrease in violent crime. I mean, ever since around the 1840s, there was a large spike in the 1960s and 1990s, but those were quelled. They were for varying reasons in those time periods. But we have seen an overall decrease in violent crime since the 1990s, and it's slowly decreasing every year, which is very good. Now, as much as it's a good thing that we have less violent crimes, it ultimately does mean less police officers are needed. Because if you think about it, the most critical situations that police officers are needed in are in violent situations. So a decrease in violent crime does mean a decrease in police officer positions. Now, this is very heavily offset by what's on our next slide, which is a massive drop in applications. So in recent years, the total amount of applications for police officers has decreased heavily by around 30%, depending on which department you're in. At the federal level, it's as high as 40% decrease in applications, from a number around, say, 25,000 to 15,000, So it's almost a 30 to 40% drop in applications, which is very serious. So, like I said, this affects both state and federal law enforcement, and there's a lot of reasons why you could say why this is happening. A lot of people say it's the portrayal of the media, or by the media, or that the benefits aren't good enough for the risks. There's a lot of good, arguments as to why the number of applications has dropped, but most people point to the shooting and killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson and how the appearance of police officers changed after that incident. On the next slide, we see the 5-year future of the field of law enforcement as far as police officers go. So what we're going to see in the next 5 years is a very high demand for police officers due to a rising population and migration of people to city centers, what I mean is the increase in density based on our population. We're going to have growing cities and less people living in rural areas. At the same time, due to the drop in applications, we're going to see a decreased supply. Now, this is very important because if you're going to look into law enforcement, this is a very good opportunity because there's going to be high demand and low supply. So you're going to be battling might not be the right word, but there's going to be much fewer applications in competition with you, and there's going to be a higher demand for your position. But on the other side, if you're just an inhabitant of the United States, this could be very bad. Because if we have just less police officers in general and a high demand for them, that means that incidents are not being covered. We're going to have, violent crimes going without arrests and, incidents like that. And the last thing we'll talk about on this final slide is the effects of COVID-19 on law enforcement. So since law enforcement is an essential service, police officers are required to go to work, even if there's a risk of an infection. I mean, if you think about it, it's better if police officers were getting infected than violent crimes, running rampant, because they know that the police are at home trying not to get sick. A lot of departments are changing to single officer squad cars instead of partner squad cars to prevent, that transmission of sitting next to your partner all day. And then finally, that law enforcement strategy has changed in cities like Philadelphia and Los Angeles to not fill up jails unnecessarily to create a viral outbreak in jails and prisons. And what this means is that they're going to cut down on arrests for misdemeanor crimes and nonviolent crimes. Well, thank you very much. That's my presentation, and it was nice having this course with everybody. I hope that you have a good presentation yourself and a good rest of your year. Thank you. Bye.